For years, this garden was my escape. My passion. Every flower, every buzzing bee, every fluttering butterfly. It was a piece of paradise I built with my own hands. Then, the HOA decided it wasn't compliant. They wanted it gone. They had no idea who they were dealing with. So, I decided to give them a garden they could never touch. A garden that became an untouchable wildlife sanctuary. And trust me, they absolutely hated it. Let's rewind a bit. My name is Sarah, and about 10 years ago, my husband Mark and I bought this house in the Willow Creek Estates. It's a lovely community, mostly quiet, with nice neighbors, and yes, an HOA. But for the longest time they were pretty invisible. My dream was always to have a truly stunning garden. Not just a few rose bushes, but a thriving ecosystem. I started small, learning as I went. Over the years, this front yard became my pride and joy. I focused on native plants, milkweed for monarchs, coneflowers for bees, and a whole section dedicated to local wildflowers. It wasn't just pretty. It was alive. I even won Yard of the Month, twice. Neighbors loved it. Kids would stop by to watch the butterflies. Even the HOA president, Mrs. Gable, complimented it once. Or so I thought. The first sign of trouble came subtly. It wasn't even from the HOA directly. It was an anonymous complaint. Someone complained my yard was untidy and had excessive weeds. Now, if you know anything about native gardening, you know that what looks weedy to an untrained eye is often a crucial part of a biodiverse habitat. These weren't weeds. These were essential native plants. I wrote a polite email back to the HOA, explaining the ecological benefits, listing the specific plants, and even attaching scientific articles about native plant importance. I thought, surely they'll understand. For a few months, silence. I thought that was the end of it. My garden continued to thrive. But it turns out, silence from an HOA isn't always agreement. Sometimes, it's just them sharpening their claws. Then came the second letter. This one wasn't anonymous. This was from the HOA board directly. They cited non-compliant ground cover, overgrown vegetation, and a failure to maintain aesthetic standards consistent with the community. They even had specific measurements. My prairie drop seed was apparently 2 inches too tall, and my wild bergamot was creating a visual obstruction to a non-existent sidewalk. And the kicker? They demanded I completely overhaul my front yard to a standard turf lawn with approved ornamental shrubs within 30 days, or face escalating fines and potential forced landscaping at my expense. 30 days. To destroy 10 years of work. 10 years of building a living sanctuary. I was furious, but also honestly heartbroken. I went to their next board meeting. I brought photos, scientific data, and even testimonials from neighbors who loved my garden. I pleaded my case, explaining the ecological benefits, the drought resistance, and how it increased property values by being unique and beautiful. Mrs. Gable, the president, just stared me down. She said, "Miss Jensen, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, the covenants are clear. This community maintains a consistent aesthetic. Your yard does not conform. We cannot make exceptions." It was like talking to a brick wall. A very well-dressed, judgmental brick wall. I left that meeting shaking. I knew I couldn't just give up. This wasn't just about my garden. It was about bullies dictating how I lived on my own property, destroying something I loved for arbitrary reasons. My husband Mark, bless his heart, suggested we just convert it to turf. "It's not worth the stress, honey," he said. But I looked at him and said, "No, absolutely not." They picked the wrong gardener to mess with. I spent days, weeks poring over everything. The HOA covenants, city ordinances, state laws, and environmental regulations. Every single word. I consulted legal forums, gardening groups, and environmental advocates. And then I found it. Not a single loophole, but a combination of municipal and state laws that, when carefully applied, would make my garden not just compliant but untouchable. Our city had a native plant and wildlife habitat protection ordinance, encouraging homeowners to create wildlife corridors. More importantly, the state had a specific provision for certified wildlife habitats that offered certain protections against municipal or HOA interference, provided specific criteria were met. And my garden? It already met most of them. I just needed to make it official. The next few weeks were a blur. The HOA's 30-day deadline was ticking, but I wasn't removing anything. I was adding. To qualify as a certified wildlife habitat under the state program, I needed 4 key elements: food, nectar, seeds, water, birdbath, dew, cover, dense shrubs, log pile, and a place to raise young, specific host plants, nesting boxes. My garden already had most of this, but I enhanced it. I installed a small attractive sign provided by the state program, Certified Wildlife Habitat. This wasn't just a garden anymore. It was now legally recognized. I also proactively contacted a local environmental nonprofit that specialized in native plant advocacy. They were thrilled. Not only did they help me with the certification paperwork, but they also offered to act as an intermediary if the HOA continued to push. The deadline came and went. I received another threatening letter from the HOA. But this time I was ready. The day after the deadline, I got a call from Mrs. Gable. She said, "Miss Jensen, your 30 days are up. We will be sending our landscapers tomorrow to begin the conversion. You will be billed for all costs, including fines." Her voice was dripping with triumph. I calmly replied, "Mrs. Gable, I would advise against that. My property is now a state-certified wildlife habitat, protected under State Statute 123.45, Section B, Subsection 7. Any attempt to alter or destroy it would be a violation of state law, subject to significant penalties. Furthermore, I have informed the Native Habitat Conservancy of your intentions, and they are prepared to intervene." There was a long pause. A very, very long pause. Then she sputtered, "What? That's impossible. We have our covenants." I explained very politely that state law supersedes HOA covenants in matters of protected habitats. I even offered to send her copies of the relevant statutes and my certification. She hung up on me. But I knew I had won the first round. The HOA didn't send landscapers. But they didn't give up either. They tried to find other angles. They sent me a notice about excessive water usage. I showed them my rain barrels and drought-tolerant plants. They complained about attracting rodents. I showed them my cat and no evidence of rodents. But the most insidious thing they did was start bad-mouthing me to other residents, spreading rumors that my garden was attracting pests and lowering property values. They even called me a troublemaker at the next HOA meeting, still refusing to acknowledge my certification. That's when I decided to escalate. I wrote an anonymous post on a popular online forum about HOAs, detailing the entire ordeal. I didn't mention my name or location, but the story went viral. Fast. Local news outlets picked up on the story. Then regional. Then national. Everyone loves a David versus Goliath story, especially when Goliath is a petty HOA and David is a gardener fighting for nature. Suddenly, my HOA was under immense public scrutiny. They were getting slammed in comment sections, receiving calls from reporters. People were driving by my house just to see the controversial garden and the untouchable sign. Donations even started pouring into the environmental nonprofit, some specifically in support of Sarah's garden. The HOA tried to issue a no media directive to residents, which only made it worse. It looked like they had something to hide. Their reputation, and particularly Mrs. Gable's, was in tatters. The pressure became too much. After weeks of negative press, frantic board meetings, and perhaps even some legal advice suggesting they were on shaky ground, the HOA finally called me for another meeting. This time, Mrs. Gable was a different person. She was conciliatory, almost apologetic. She acknowledged my certified wildlife habitat status, and even tried to frame it as a wonderful asset to the community. They voted to officially recognize my garden status, retract all previous violation notices and fines, and even proposed a new landscaping amendment to encourage native plant installations in the community, rather than forbidding them. Was it a genuine change of heart? Or just a desperate attempt at damage control to save face and prevent a lawsuit? Honestly, I don't care. I got what I wanted. My garden was safe, and the HOA was forced to adapt. And yes, Mrs. Gable resigned a few months later. Coincidence? Probably not. So, that's the story of how my little piece of paradise went from a non-compliant violation to an officially protected wildlife sanctuary. It was a stressful, infuriating, and ultimately incredibly rewarding battle. What did I learn? HOAs can be power-hungry, arbitrary, and incredibly frustrating. But they aren't invincible. Knowledge is power. Research your rights, know your local and state laws, and don't be afraid to stand up for what you believe in. Now, my garden isn't just a place of beauty for me. It's a testament to resilience, a beacon for local wildlife, and a constant gentle reminder to my HOA that sometimes, the most compliant thing you can do is let nature thrive. If you found this story inspiring or helpful, please give this video a big thumbs up. It really inspires me. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Have you found a clever loophole? Battled a tough regulation? Let us know. And for more stories of resilience, legal wins, and maybe a little bit of petty revenge against frustrating systems, hit that subscribe button and bell icon.